Welcome to the Hacking Your Health podcast with Ben Canning and Dave Kennedy. Two guys heading out to hack body, mind, business, and beyond. We are here to provide a single source, bullshit-free guide to understanding your body and how you can live better for longer.
Yo, what's up, everybody? Just before we get into this week's podcast, I'd like to take a second to say two things. Number one, thanks for tuning in once again. We wouldn't be here if it weren't for every listen, every download, every watch. Secondly, if you can take time to subscribe to wherever you listen to or watch us, it would be greatly appreciated, and it would do a lot for us and the show. Thanks. Enjoy this week's episode. Yo, what's up, everybody? Welcome back. I'm Ben Canning.
I'm Dave Kennedy.
And this is Hacking Your Health podcast. For anybody who's watching, it's very bright in here. So Dave, with his new setup, Luke messaged me the other day saying, I think today, I think you need to upgrade your setup. And I was like, no. He's like, at least turn a light on. So, I mean, I have these lights that sit here all the time and they're never on. But as you can see, they're really fucking
looks
bright.
great. The picture looks really great. Like,
it's because they got the good lights on.
Yeah, plus your beard is on point and everything, man. Look at that.
Thank you so much. Yeah. I think it's going to have to go. It's getting a bit of a throat. Anyway. I mean, I know we spoke on Monday, but what's going on with you?
It's a solid week. I'll tell you the legs training that I've been doing as of late, focusing fairly heavily on volume with running the racks, has definitely been hurting quite a bit. So I did Orange Theory today, and I did a lift yesterday, and I could definitely feel it. I was not running to my peak maximum that I normally do today because my calves, my legs, my quads, my glutes and hammies were all just hammered from yesterday's session, but it's been good. I'm actually going through a little struggle right now with Orange Theory. You have different instructors and trainers, and over time, new instructors come and things like that, and I've never had any issues with any of the instructors at all. I'm totally, but like it's a ruthless. The group that goes to these are ruthless in a lot of senses, where like if they don't like the instructor, they'll just stop going to the classes, right? And I've never been that person because, and there's been people that would stop going to certain classes because they didn't like the instructor. I'm like, oh, I didn't notice. There's nothing wrong with them. I mean, it's just maybe it's not as energetic as some of the other instructors or things like that or coaches, but, I've never had an issue with it. I just like to go there. I like to focus on what I'm doing. I like to put in as maximum effort as possible, and get my hour done. And, I start the day off on a good note. And a few months ago, we had this instructor come and this coach, and, he sung the entire time. And this is a few months ago, but he wasn't a normal, regular coach. So he didn't come all the time. Okay. So like when, especially like 90s rock would come on, like throughout the whole training session, he was singing, and just like at the top of his lungs with the microphone on to every song, Nirvana, screaming, that type of stuff, and so it was super distracting for me. And I hated that session, but at the end of the day, I was like, it's fine. For one, maybe it was just a one-time fluke. And second, he's not my normal coach throughout the time because he was from a different studio. So I was like, no big deal. I'll just get over it. And so just this last week, it turns out he's now in my time slot. They moved him to our studio, and now he's in our time slot. And he's happens to be when I'm working out, and he sings every single friggin' session. So it's the most distracting thing. And I mean, this might seem petty for people listening, but like when I go to, a specific thing and I want to, perform and to, give my maximum effort, I not hearing the song that in your head, it immediately causes me to lose focus of like that zone that I'm in and have to focus on him singing. Is he going to sing next? Is he going to sing this time? What is he singing now? Is this the actual music? Is this not? And I start getting into my own head, and it totally throws off my whole workout. So I was like, you know what? I'll just give him another try. No big deal. I'm sure it was just another fluke. He's not really singing the entire time. I had another class on Monday. Same thing happened. I was like, so this is going to be my thing. So now I'm switching my workout days so that I don't have to go to this coach. And I did say something. I'm like, and I said it very positively, like, 'cause I'm a positive person. I don't want to the guy's really nice. Like, he's a super nice guy. But I just said to the head coach, I'm like, listen, is there any way that there could be like no singing that happens in the middle of workouts because it's really distracting, or just turn your mic off and sing. So I can't, barely hear. If you want to sing along to the music, cool. Just don't do it, with the speakers up at maximum volume. That's drowning the sound of the music. And it turned into like a really awkward situation to where, this person I've known, this head coach I've known for several years, kind of like laughed and said, "Oh, I kind of like his music," and then kind of like went away. I was like, "Oh, this is awkward." So I was like, "Okay, I'll just switch my days. So I'm switching my days now. I got to figure out my workout routine so that I'm not doing Mondays and Wednesdays. I'm thinking either Wednesdays or Fridays or Tuesdays or Thursdays, and adjusting my workout routines as appropriate. But that's been my distractions for this week on the resistance training. I know it's first world problems that I'm having here. All my instructor sings during a thing, but for me, I'm accustomed to a certain thing, and I don't mind the trainer. I don't mind new trainers. I don't mind new people. It's just, follow the program and don't have a chorus in the middle of a program because it's totally distracting. It's not just me, by the way. There's other people complaining about it, just won't go up and say anything. It's just one of those things where I was just like, I just gotta. So I'm actually trying out a new studio on Mondays to see if I like that new studio. It's only like 5 more minutes of a difference. And then if I do like that studio, I'll just go there and just do Mondays and Wednesdays instead of going to the studio that I've currently going to for 2.5 years. And then or switch my training routines out, which is more of a pain in the butt. So we'll see how it goes. But that's been my drama for the week. And
tune in next week to find out what happens with
the story of what's happened here. Yeah. How's everything going with you, dude?
First, I will say is sometimes singing really, I just don't like I don't like the feeling, how it makes me feel. So sometimes it makes me feel a little bit awkward when people are singing. So, I can fully relate to that. How's things going with me? Good. I trained this morning. Well, one thing I will say is my sleep has been slightly off since coming back. I thought I was over it. So on Monday, I worked like all day, went to bed at like 11 o'clock, didn't wake up again until 11 o'clock on Tuesday morning. I was like, what the fuck? So my sleep has been a little bit off, obviously, after traveling back and whatever else. But other than that, I'm good. Went to the gym this morning. And on the way, I was like, in my head, I was like, right, no matter what, like I'm not letting myself give in to myself in this session. So like, whenever things start to get hard, you're like, oh, well, I'll just stop, whatever. Right. No, I had a really good session. I came back and I did 30 minutes of cardio. And then I've been pretty much doing calls the rest of the day, building out the training for the mainframe for today, which is going to be on MyFitnessPal, and how to sort of master it, premium versus the free version, all that sort of stuff. So things are good here. Absolutely zero complaints. It's good to be back in my normal routine. I'll say that much for sure.
Yeah, it's the routines that, and I know you've been traveling for the past few weeks, and getting back to, a certain routine is really, really important. And I noticed I recognize that too from last week to this week, even though I was only gone for just a few days. It's interesting to see too, because a lot of people struggle with the same types of situations. I just saw somebody that was on Discord on the We Hack Health Discord server, talking about, hey, how do you, I looked at the local hotel gym and it looks pretty crummy. Where do I go for gyms? So how do you all, figure those out? And we've covered this in previous podcasts before, but I think it's important to note that, those routines and habits, because you're used to going to certain gyms, certain types of equipment, certain types of the day, certain types of instructors that aren't singing during the middle of of the things, but you got to kind of take yourself out of the element, but still stay consistent with what you're doing. And, it's interesting that because he had asked, like, what's your routine? And I say, well, the first thing I do when I go to a hotel is I assume the hotel gym is going to be really crummy, unless it's like, in Vegas or something like that, right? That usually has a decent gym. And so I usually just go to Google Maps and I just search, gyms near there. And I look at, what's the coolest looking, grungy, meathead looking gym that I can find out there that has heavy weights that I can go to. And then almost every single gym that you have out there has, gym passes. And so, I'll typically go there and get my lift in just like I do any other time. And that's kind of, the way that I handle my travel, and trying to make sure that I can at least have a gym that's central to me, that I kind of consider my home gym while I'm out. And, maybe I'll try a few different gyms if I'm out there for a few different times. If there's a couple cool looking ones, something new to explore, new equipment, things like that might be kind of interesting and fun. So, these are all things that you kind of explore as you're traveling, but coming back to your routine and your home and your consistent gym that the people and the faces that every single time, gives you definitely a sense of comfort as you go through. But I'll tell you, on the consistency thing, it's interesting. I had a conversation with Aaron this morning, and I was in a hurry this morning to get to the office right after Orange Theory, and I was rushing. I was like, I got to get my progress photos, taken. And she's like, why don't you just do those later? I'm like, because I always take my progress photos. Whoa. Yeah, I was like, whoa. First of all, my progress photos are more important than me going to work. Let's just be perfectly honest here. No, but the funny part about that was, it's consistency, right? And doing the same things over and over again that give you the desired results. And, I take my progress photos at the same time. I take my weight photos at the same time. I take my measurements at the same time. I work out. I try to work out almost at the same time. And sometimes it doesn't always happen, but, consistently trying to get it done in the morning. So the consistency, the repeatability, and holding yourself accountable for those routines is what makes this all possible in our day-to-day lives. Again, we're not, foraging food and out there having to, fight for, survival and to get, animals to kill, to eat, to survive for our for our packs. And so, it's the things that allow us to be consistent in our busy day cycles that allow us to stay focused and do those. Just like we brush our teeth, take a shower, put on deodorant. So I said, this is a consistency thing for me. I have to do it now because I always take my progress photos right after Orange Theory, right before I hop in the shower. And then, from there, I hop in the shower, get changed, and I head out to the rest of the day work. That's just what I do. I can't skip that type of routine because if I skip it, then what else am I skipping from a consistency perspective? Am I going to skip a workout next? Am I going to skip a meal or eat more on a meal? Am I going to not do this, not do that? And now it all of a sudden is, throws me out of my consistency pattern. So, for me, I'd like to be in a structured program, something that keeps me consistent, that I can do day in and day out. That is immutable. It's not something that I'm allowed to really change, right? I have to go and do it. I didn't feel like going to Orange Theory this morning, even though I got some decent sleep. Just woke up kind of, feeling like kind of meh. I could definitely sleep in another 2 hours, and didn't even think about it. I was like, okay, that's fine, but I'm going to get up and I'm going to get ready and I'm going to take my pre-workout and I'm going to go to Orange Theory. I don't have a choice.
I've been excited all day yesterday to take my pre-workout.
So I would tell you that the pre-workout is, so when I'm going to bed, I'm like, man, I can't wait to take my pre-workout in the morning. This is
like saying good night and all the pre-workout set out for the next morning.
Yeah, I'm patting it. I'm holding it next to my chest as I'm sleeping, so it's ready to go.
Do you just have it beside your bed? Is it on?
Yeah. No. It's actually like instead of like having a doll or a teddy bear when you go to bed, it's my pre-workout that I hold. Yeah, just like cuddle it with it. And, it's my bottle.
The thing, number one, in terms of the gyms and other places, I think sometimes you really nail it. Like we did whenever we were in Phoenix. Like that gym was absolutely awesome.
Oh, it's awesome.
And sometimes you really don't, and you just have to make do. Sometimes you just have to make do with the hotel gym as well. And okay, maybe it's not optimal. Like in the hotel that I was in Texas the first time around, there was literally a treadmill, elliptical machine, another treadmill, a bike, and then a set of probably about 10 different dumbbells with a maximum one that was like 35 pounds. Not ideal, but I was pretty much able to get cardio in on one of the machines and I was able to get a solid arm workout in. I just had to do a lot of reps to get it. So there is always something that can be done, and it is the consistency that is the piece more than anything else. Yes, you'll maybe not be able to get your exact programmed or planned workout done, but you'll definitely be able to do something. And using but the gym didn't have this, or the gym couldn't facilitate this as an excuse is just bullshit, probably more than anything else. And I'll tell you a story, one more thing about consistency and sort of the conversations that you had. And I've spoken about this before, like how I sort of like teach myself and reteach myself discipline and the conversations that I have myself. So obviously I'm on slightly lower calories, slightly, than I was before I went away. And on Monday I was like in a rush and I hadn't really eaten anything. I was like, I'll just go and grab something in the snack cupboard. I don't know if you guys have, in fact, I know that you guys don't because I've spent enough time in supermarkets in the US. Wagon wheels are like chocolate biscuits. So basically it's like marshmallow with jam in the middle with 2 biscuits wrapped in chocolate. Anyway, long story short, there's one in the cupboard. I went in.
Sounds amazing.
I got it. They are amazing. And I had it in my hand and I was like, no, this is a slippery slope. This is a gateway drug. So I just literally put it back in and walked off. So the conversations you have with yourself are important too. And for anybody who played the game of what weight Ben was whenever he got back from, yes, I was 221 pounds. So whenever I left, what did I say I was the other day? 208, I think.
You didn't say. You didn't actually say.
No, I said what I was when I left.
Oh, I think you said you were 206. 208, yeah.
I can't remember. I'll have to do the calculation. Yeah, 208, I think. I was 221 whenever I got back. But I have started to come down already, so it's fine. Thanks for everybody.
221?
Yeah.
Wow. That's a big gain.
Yep. All muscle, all on my calves.
All muscle, all the calves. That's the calf people. Non-tall people that talk about calves. Getting F off.
Speaking about non-tall people who talk about calves, today's topic, we want to talk about comparing ourselves to others.
Yes.
Honestly, you would think we set this stuff up.
It's interesting. I get a lot of time on social media, as you do, around, well, hey, I'm no Ben Canning or I'm no Dave Kennedy, but look at me, and that's, while I appreciate those types of comments or giving me a compliment saying, hey, I'm impressed with your physique. At the same time, comparing yourself to others isn't something that you should focus on, because, everybody's body type is different. Everybody's life is different. Everybody's experiences, surgeries, ailments, where they're at in progress, how far they let themselves go versus where they're at today. All of those are different. Or when you started your journey, are all very, very, very different. And, what's interesting is that there's a lot of research out there that if you were a athlete as a young kid, and you lifted weights and things like that earlier in your ages, the easier it is for you to put on muscle mass and have faster gains, because your body essentially remembers those types of activities from when you were younger. I didn't have that, right? I had the Marines. So when I got out of the military, or when I got into the military, I did a lot of cardio and stuff like that, but I didn't do much lifting. It was all pretty much cardio all the time. Just a lot of running, a lot of sit-ups, a lot of pull-ups. That was basically it. So we weren't required to go to the gym very often, and actually lift weights, believe it or not. I know that's probably surprising to some folks in the Marines. You probably think of meatheads and lifting all the time.
That's what I think of.
Yeah, no, it was a lot of, early morning PT was, we're running our asses off, 10 miles, and, with a gas mask on, and then, doing some push-ups, and that was basically it. So, you had to be fit, but it was never anything that was a muscular type of thing. So, I never had that ability. So to make my progress has probably been slower than somebody that is just getting back into things, or, has had a history of lifting before in the past. So there's some science behind it, essentially. And I don't know, I shouldn't even be commenting on the science of it, because I don't fully understand it. But basically the nitrogen that's injected into your muscles, the cell structure of that is permanently there once you do it. So when you basically lose that muscle, your muscle remembers that it was that big at that point in time, for lack of a better term. So it moves to that faster, because you have more of those cells in there that allow you to remember that you're not having to rebuild all of that over again. So, it's an interesting thing that our body actually remembers, hey, we used to need that muscle strength. I'm probably going to keep that for a little bit longer, or, longer in case I need it again, so I can shoot back up much faster before in the future. It's amazing how our bodies work, right? Absolutely incredible. But in stating that, comparisons are something that, I think can be defeating for a lot of people, because, you look at somebody, you see an Instagram influencer, you see, somebody that has a perfect 6-pack or 8-pack or whatever. You're like, they're just jacked out of their minds. You're like, man, I really want to be like that. And, when I first joined with Ben, the first thing that I said is I wanted to look like the specific guy in Tonal, Coach Jackson. And, looking at his physique, first of all, he's super short, so his ability to put on that type of muscle mass and look really decent is much easier. Second, our body types are completely different in many ways. So, it's not a one-to-one comparison on what you're doing and what you're accomplishing. What you should really be focusing on is, are you seeing progress to what you want to become, and, continuously changing what you want to become, so you can continue to have that success. And I think when you do comparisons to the others, like, saying, hey, I'm not as good as that guy there, but no, you are as good as that guy there. It's just different. You're in a different part of your journey, a different part of your phases. You're being consistent with things. You're having successes. You should want to celebrate that. You shouldn't want to, put yourself down a notch, because what you've accomplished is better than 98% of the population out there today. And it's interesting, because there was a statistic about military fighting forces, most specifically with all the recent activity of China and everything else. And it was, if the United States went into a conflict with China, who would win? Okay. And what was interesting is that currently only 1% of the U.S. population serves in the military, and only 26% of the entire population of the United States is even able to serve because of obesity, other health ailments, and everything else. So you look at 26% obese that aren't in the obesity category to potentially serve. We have obviously a major problem here. So the fact that you've made progress, the fact that you're fixing, yourself to be more healthy, is a testament in itself that you're above a notch than a larger percentage of the population that's out there that also is struggling, that also is is fighting. So, take your victories where those are deserved, because they absolutely are deserved. And don't compare yourself to anybody else or wanting a specific body type. Keep putting the work in to get to that, but don't say, hey, I'm never going to be there, or I can't be there, or I'm not like this person, like that person. Push towards that, but don't make it a one-to-one comparison, because it's completely different in everybody's scenarios.
I think the biggest thing is that you will never be that person. There is no way that if someone comes, and I've done this before, like I remember, I used to have clients come to me and they were in an initial competition and they went, I want to look like this person. I'm like, I cannot make you look like that person. Like, it is not possible. Like, it's like you said, you can strive to be as lean or as big or in similar shapes or work in similar areas, but you're never going to, like you say, one for one look like another person. I think for me, it's a bit of a double-edged sword, because yes, to some people, comparison can be a negative, as in like it would put them down like, oh, I'm never going to be able to do that. I'm never going to be able to do that. But there are people who have another mindset that will sort of compare and think, I could do that too. Do you know what I mean? And I've had people before, essentially, if you sort of reverse engineer the whole thing, people who looked at you and your sort of journey from whenever you were quote unquote Big Dave, and how much weight you lost and the job that you did and the struggles and the stresses and everything that you had, people will look at that and think, if he can do it, I can do it. So I think it's definitely a perspective thing, and it's definitely a mindset thing. But if you think that you're the sort of person that comparison is potentially a negative, then I would definitely avoid. And I think that the potential, or the place that you should put your comparison, is with yourself and your own sort of progress in your own journey. And even if I think about my own progress, like it was the start of this month, the start of February, I've been training for 9 years. And if I think back, like, I haven't obviously been 100% consistent those entire 9 years. I haven't always 100% prioritized my training. I've had times where I've really pushed it, times where I've sort of pulled back and let other things prioritize and whatever else. If I had prioritized the training only and really focused on my training and nutrition for the entire 9 years, I'd probably be much further on than I am now in terms of my physique and how I look, or what size I am, or how lean I am, or whatever it may be. But other things in life sort of got in the way. Business, work, whatever it was, something somewhere along the line got in the way. I still trained and I still sort of went through the motions or maintained or whatever I needed to do, but life sort of got in the way. And if I even start to sort of think back to like the journey and the different times and the different sort of periods, it's cool to sort of see how it can take a back seat but still be a part. And as you said, sometimes it can just come, like, sort of rise up to the top, and you get back into that sort of swing of things and you get back into sort of where you're at. And I am pretty responsive whenever I get to the place where I sort of go back all in with it.
Yeah, the consistency part of it and the comparison part of it, are all different things. Like I the biggest thing that I always struggled with when looking at, comparisons was, I'd see somebody that, would be, much further along in their progress as myself. And I'd be like, man, I'm not progressing fast enough, or I'm not seeing a change, or I'm not seeing the difference. There's so much that goes into how you feel, other than aesthetics, other than that scale. Are you feeling better about yourself for being consistent? That's one. Second, are your measurements changing? What other physical things can you see? Is your endurance better? Is your sleep better? How you feel better? Those are all, signs that you're continuously making progress. And, I think the biggest thing that we struggle with is that, we're a society that expects, things to happen to us almost immediately, right? We expect, once we start lifting for 2
Jeff
weeks.
Bezos on Amazon Prime,
right?
Fuck this all, and are impatient.
Man, I just ordered those arms you told me to order, and it's not gonna be here until Friday, so I'm super upset. But
yeah, it's like, what do you mean Friday? Why can't I
seriously
get it
Friday? Why can't I get it right now? Why don't I have a 6-pack of abs right now? And I think that's the biggest thing that we forget is that it takes time for this stuff to happen. I mentioned on the last podcast, it's taken me 2.5 years to really feel good about my body and myself, right? And, to be in a position where I feel like I'm at a good state, it doesn't mean I'm going to stop. I mean, I'm going to continue to push this as hard as I possibly can, but I'm in a good state to where I feel good about myself. I feel good about my body. I feel good about wearing, thin clothes. I don't feel like I have a gut. I don't feel like I'm overweight. I'm in a different position than I was substantially, just recently, 6 months ago to 2 years ago to 2.5 years ago. So, it's the progress that we look for in our journeys that really forge who we are. But again, don't compare yourselves to anybody else. I'm on testosterone replacement therapy, which, definitely gives you an edge above more people. There's no question about it. Testosterone external testosterone, scientifically has been shown to increase muscle mass more than regular testosterone does, because you're injecting more into yourself. And obviously I have medical reasons for that, and I have low testosterone levels, and my doctor prescribes it and everything else, and it's done in a very baseline state. But I do have an edge when it comes to somebody that doesn't need testosterone, right? So my progress may be substantially faster than somebody else that's out there. So you have to look at the variables. And two, I mean, obviously I run 2 successful companies, so I have access to a lot of technology. I have access to my own personal gym. I have access to things that isolate movements a little bit better than others. So, I may have more of an advantage in certain cases than somebody else that only has barbells and dumbbells. And not to say that isn't all you need. That's fantastic. But, there's different things that progress faster or slower than others. And you just have to realize that, you're, and by the way, I will also say most of the influencers that you see posting these things on like TikTok and YouTube and things like that are super unhappy in life, because they have to, I mean, the guys that have to maintain that type of physique, I mean, it is starvation. It is making you feel like shit all the time. It is lighting. It is editing. It is a lot of other things that happen for that to be just like that. So, it's a facade world that most people live in when it comes to those types of people that you follow day in and day out. And, and
it's fake news. Again, fake news.
It is fake news. It is absolutely fake news, right?
But I think the thing about it is, number one, they don't look like that all year round.
No.
Number two, if we sort of take it back to, you remember the comment that James made about sort of people who get into the fitness industry are sort of a bit like loose cannons in some way, like something has driven them in some way to do that. I think that's a similar, not to everybody, like I'm not, judging anybody, but I have definitely seen it time and time again. There is definitely some level of insecurity or something that drives a person to want to take their body to that and show it off at that level. And you're absolutely right. Like, it is not a pleasant experience to do that and go there. I would say there are better ways to do it now than there have been in the past, but it definitely is tough. And like, you can hear sort of bodybuilders and competitors and photo shoots and athletes and all this stuff talk about like the grind and like being in the hole and the suck and all this stuff and embracing it. Yeah. And it is a mental challenge more than anything else, but it's like I often hear that when they look their best, they feel their worst. And it's hard to find that balance. And I'm not saying that people need to take that extremes. It's just recognizing that photo that you're potentially looking at is like a snapshot in time that someone has worked very specifically for, number one, for a matter of years, but number two, even on a smaller time scale of like whatever the prep was to get to that point. And there was maybe one day or a week where they looked like that, and then that was it. And it's being able to recognize that and know that people don't walk about like that all the time. Even like you and I say, like whenever we take photos, we're like, yeah, look, I have a vein over here. We don't look like that all the time. It's just we've just trained and we look bigger and we feel bigger. Like it's like whenever 45 minutes after the gym, you just feel like you're deflated.
I mean, everybody I talk to is like, you're so much smaller in person. I'm like, gosh damn it. Okay, I'm going to go do some push-ups right now, okay? We don't look like this all the time. It's a pump. It's, perfect lighting. It's, happen to be focused on those specific muscle groups at the time. Believe me, if you looked at I had a great picture of my legs the other day. They looked amazing. My quads looked effing crazy. It looked like I was like, oh my God, where did these quads come from? I've never seen these before. It was like almost overnight. Like I had these big quads,
just been running the rack.
Right. Yeah, running the rack. And so I got it to, I took my progress pictures today. I'm like, where the hell did those quads go? Where are they at? Like, what happened? Did they go away? Like, they just magically disappeared?
Is the photo going to be cropped? Like,
it's
the
been
top
4
half
days.
of your back and the bottom half of the gym.
Did I lose, 10 inches of my calves or not my calves, my quads within 3 days or 4 days. So, it's crazy, but, it's, obviously it gives you a perspective that, people look like that all the time, and that's not the case, right?
Yeah. I would also like to clarify for anybody listening, the arms that Dave ordered are arms to hold a camera. He's not actually ordering new arms for himself, in case anybody's wondering what the fuck's going on.
Yeah.
But yes, the comparison thing. So number one, you sort of need to take everything that you see on social media, as you should with anything, not just how people look at their physique, with a pinch of salt, and recognize that, that is a very small snapshot in time. The other thing is, a lot of these people, that is their job, to look that way. Do you mean that is literally their job? They get paid to look that way. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So they don't have, I'm not saying they don't have family or kids, but they don't have other sort of responsibilities and stuff to focus on. And I sort of relate it back to myself whenever I worked in the gym. Like, I didn't have as many time commitments. I was in the gym all day. I maybe had, between 8 and 10 hours worth of clients, and then I could train for 3 hours in the middle of the day. Like, I had absolutely no problem doing that. I had my meal prep with me. Like, it was definitely easier to manage because that was the only thing I was really prioritizing. And I did stay relatively lean that entire time, but potentially because I was so active, because 10 hours a day I was coaching clients, which involved me going and picking up weights all the time. So yeah, it was definitely much easier for me to stay lean and be in that sort of position rather than I'm not picking up anything whenever I'm in the office here, a bottle of water maybe. So yeah, understand that as a comparison is important too.
Yeah, I mean, it's an interesting piece because I remember when I first started on my journey. And it's funny because I was looking at some of my progress photos for today in comparison to several years ago. And, like, if you would have told me, that guy 2.5 years ago that I would look like the guy I am today, I'd be like, there's no way. Like, that's just not possible. Like, I'm not capable of being able to do this. So, but I don't look like that Coach Jackson.
I wonder would it have put you off? Like, if I was actually be able to give you like this is what you'll look like in 2.5 years, and it was you'd be like, nah, I can't do it. This guy's lost his spot. Hang up.
I'm done. But I think there is something to be said about that around the time frame it takes you to get there and appreciate all the work you did. Because, I thought about this in my head recently, which is, if I was back at that same stage again as I was 2.5 years ago, would I do it all over again? And the answer of that is yes, I would, but I don't want to go through all of that again because it's been a lot of work to get here, right? I've been busting my ass for 2.5 years to get to a point where I'm not. So it's even more motivation for me not to stop, to have consistency and to continue to push myself forward and have to let this, atrophy and then have to go back and do it again. So, I think the biggest thing for me is like, yeah, could I do it again? Yes. Do I want to do it again? No. And it's interesting because like when I'm giving people advice on, where to start their journey, I sometimes get, a little bit confused, not confused in the sense of like, I don't know what I'm talking about, but confused. And there are times where I don't know what I'm talking about. So I don't speak on things I don't know what to talk about. But I almost get confused on, the struggles that I had then because I'm so consistent now. So I have to think back and be like, oh, well, back then, I really struggled with the nutrition aspects and the hunger craving, right? Whereas I don't necessarily care about that now. I'm not controlled by food. I don't care about food. I literally, I'm like, oh shit, I got to eat because I got to get my protein in or else Ben's going to yell at me on my check-in. So, it's one of those things where I don't pay attention to food as a driver of myself. Whereas I remember before, I remember extremely in clear as day, I'd be like, oh, I'm so hungry. And I'd sit there in the fridge and I'd just be like, I could eat everything in here right now, and then I'd go over to the pantry and I'd be like, there's definitely some wheat thins over here. Right. And then, and then I'd go over here and I can smell them the thing with that is, my struggles then are different than my struggles now. Right. My struggles now are, distractions. I actually said this in the check-in today, but making sure that, I'm really busy right now with work, Binary is going really fast and pushing forward really quick. Trusted Sec, we're growing into, the company that we are and continue to push forward on that. So I'm just busy with like day-to-day stuff that's really, occupying my time throughout the day. I mean, I'm just, getting barraged at all sides. And what I notice now is that if I don't get my workout done in the mornings before all of the chaos starts, it's just a shit show because I'll have people calling me, I'll have emails I have to respond to almost immediately. And so my workouts take like 3 hours, but then, I have to be like showered and at the office by a certain time for another meeting. So like I'm rushing the shower, I'm rushing getting ready, I'm trying to slam in protein as I'm going through it. It's just chaotic, right? So, I'm finding that my priorities and my struggles are different now than they were before. And you kind of have to equate that and just be adaptable to those as you kind of come through and go along, because the struggles you had before in the past aren't going to be the struggles you have tomorrow. And as you progress in this fitness journey, again, as long as you have consistency, you will continue to make progress as things go along. So, those are all the things that I would just heavily recommend for you personally, is that regardless of what stage you're in, you talk about the pillars, and this is this is a subset of the most important pillar, right? Which is mindset, right? And we've talked about that, which is you have to have consistency. And I'll see a lot of people that have had a successful change in their life, whether they were extremely overweight or obese or extremely unhealthy or extremely skinny, what was the thing that changed for them? And every single person that I've heard talk about kind of like from a motivational perspective of what the change was for them, it wasn't discipline. Discipline's part of it, right? But it was the repetitiveness and the consistency that made that change for them, right? The flip of the switch that said, hey, I'm going to do this from now on. I don't have a choice, and these are the things that I'm going to do to make a change in my life. And guess what? I don't have a choice. I have to do this. I have to push forward. This is something that I absolutely cannot let slip. 1 day, 2 days, 3 days, 4 days, where I failed before, I will, be successful today. That mindset shift is just consistency. It's just saying I have to do this. And that's where I've heard the success come from on the mindset aspects of things, of how people have made those changes. Joey Swoll, if you don't follow him, is it Joey Swoll? I think it's Joey Swoll. He's a kind of like a fitness influencer, I guess.
I mean, there is a guy,
online.
Joey Swoll, but I don't know if it's the person that you're going to speak about.
I think it's Joey Swoll, isn't it? Yeah, it's Joey Swoll. It's that guy. Yeah.
Okay.
He's but his life story is actually really interesting. So he's a guy on TikTok and YouTube and everything else, and his whole thing is he'll see recordings of people posting gym experiences on TikTok, and then he kind of critiques whether or not that was good or bad. So, for example, like talking about gym culture and stuff like that has been kind of his claim to fame. So, like most recently, there was a guy that slightly glanced at a woman as they were walking through, and you could tell like the guy's like slightly glancing to make sure he doesn't get in her way, so that one, the mirror, and also not get in the way of the camera. Which if you're in a gym and there's a billion people taking cameras, you have no effing idea where the hell you're supposed to go, what you're supposed to do, how do you get your sets in. Like, it's chaotic. I think cameras should be banned from gyms, to be perfectly honest with you, unless you're a personal trainer or something like that. Okay. But the woman just goes off, and this guy is a creeper for checking her out. Right? And listen, there's a lot of creepers out there. There's a lot of people that do, that are harassing women and things like that. This was not one of those cases. It was literally the guy, you could tell he glances over really quick, just to make sure he's not in her way. He's not in her picture shot, and walks past her on the way, doesn't look at her again, doesn't stare at her, just goes past her. Right. And Joey's, kind of goes into the whole, like, hey, he's just making sure he's not, invading your space here. We have to be able to know what's around us to be able to navigate the gym so we don't trip over people or things like that. Like, so, I appreciate what he does, but his story is actually really interesting too, because, I think he, if I remember correctly, his story was heavily involved in drugs and, alcohol and things to that effect. And what really changed his life was focusing on the gym and positivity. And his thing, again, has always been, I just go to the gym consistent wise. Instead of me going out and doing drugs or things like that, I focus on the gym, and I focus on, the consistency of being there, which has completely changed my life for the better, because I'm going there every day instead of going on the street and doing drugs. So, it's interesting that, regards to the experience, it was, yeah. So he said he was addicted to opioids, suicidal, completely alone, without any purpose. And he's been on his journey, and obviously he's a, freak of nature when it comes to how big that dude is, and awesome to watch. But, at the end of the day, like, we all have our own stories and what we struggle with. Using fitness and health as a way to change that, curb that, and allow you to be successful in your gym. The consistency is the number one thing. You have to go. There's no choice. Like, if you're listening to this today, you're not going to the gym, go to the fucking gym. I'm using that, guys.
Go to the fucking gym.
Go to the fucking gym.
The thing though, like, as I said, like, over the past 9 years or whatever it's been, like, there may have been times that I didn't make as much progress as I could, or I didn't push in terms of, like, whether it was fat loss or muscle building or whatever, but I still went to the gym. Like, I still showed up and went to the gym. And it's, it's a similar story. Like, whenever I initially started, I went from one escape of something that we'll not talk about to essentially the gym was just another escape. It was just another distraction from something. And obviously it was a lot more positive and it was a lot more healthy one, but it's the same sort of thing. And I've heard it before time and time with clients that they say, if they didn't have the gym or they didn't make that change, they don't know where that other path would have led them. So yeah, for me, like, I use the gym in a lot of different ways at a lot of different times. Sometimes it's just a place to just go and lift weights, and it just needs to be that, and that's all it needs. Or sometimes it's to go and sort of challenge myself mentally and physically to know that I can still push myself and I can still do more than I think I can, and all those sort of things. So using it for whatever you need it for and whatever circumstances. And even like clients who have went through things even recently, you know, stuff with family and sickness and illness and death and whatever else, and they still sort of have that place where they can go and sort of ground themselves, anchor themselves, and use that as something that's maybe a constant or something they can control in their life when everything else is sort of spinning out around them. And even like you saying about, you know, being busy in work, like I think that the one thing that I've sort of noticed, I guess over the past 2 years, I'm not going to say by any stretch of the imagination it was easier, but there was definitely less distractions whenever COVID was a thing. And everybody was sort of locked in the house or not able to go out. Like you couldn't socialize, you couldn't do this. And I've seen it again with clients, and Louise has mentioned it and Heath has mentioned it. Like the progress that they were able to make then was much more because they didn't have as many social engagements or distractions, or there was no like, oh, let's go for a drink, or, you know, everybody's at work and blah, 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 and whatever else. So, you know, different times allow for different things, and, you know, just recognizing that there are more distractions and there are other things out there. So either you try and avoid those as much as possible, or you just recognize that progress potentially would be a little bit slower than it was before.
Yeah. And, you know, the distractions for me are my biggest challenge right now today, right? You know, it's just, you know,
the wheat thins, there's wheat thins everywhere.
The wheat thins I've been better at. Okay. I've been better at the wheat thins. I haven't been purchasing those. The Mountain Dew hard seltzers might be another problem here coming up, but I don't have those.
To go back to what you were saying about you sort of whenever we started to now, like, would you do it again? Yes, absolutely. But it was hard. But I think that like it's a different type of hard.
Different.
If that makes sense. So it's like, it's almost an enjoyable difficult, if that makes sense. Like there was a lot of learning and relearning how to move and like a lot of challenges. But now I guess it comes back to discipline and freedom. Do you know what I mean? If you had the discipline to put all the work in now to where you're at now, like you can have a little bit of fun about it, and I don't want to say get away with more, but you know, you have, you know, your baseline calories are a lot higher because there is more of you in a sense of more muscle mass. So you have a lot more freedom in that way. And training is a lot different. Do you know what I mean? Like us going and training now would be much more different than us training two and a half years ago. Do you know what I mean?
No question about that. Well, I mean, it's funny because I think you sent me a video of me doing deadlifts before. And it's funny, I look like a freaking T-Rex giraffe, you know, doing deadlifts with I think I had 45s on each side. So, you know, it was at, you know, 90 plus 45, so 135. And so, you know, here's me like struggling with 135 pounds doing a deadlift. And I look like this, you know, awkwardly kind of out of shape, you know, like giraffe, you know, like that's picking up these deadlifts in a long way. And, you know, to look back at that and, you know, and all the knowledge that I've learned since then and being able to apply that, you know, it would be a very different approach, right? If you take my knowledge that I've compounded over the pain, suffering, tears, and fun and excitement and joy and successes and failures and everything else, and couple that with my experiences from 2.5 years ago, you know, I think it would be much easier for me to accomplish, you know, what I have done now, because I have that framework, the experiences that are there. And I think that's a good life lesson is, you know, if you fail a lot in life, you know, you're either A, not learning from your experiences, or two, you're not trying the right things to be successful. And, you know, I think when we look at fitness and health and comparisons of others, our expectations is that, you know, we're going to be that person, right? We're going to see the success of that person. Whereas somebody may have been bodybuilding for 15 years, right? Or 20 years or 30 years. And you're like, well, you know, I want that in a year. You know, like, do you think I could look like that in a year? Well, no, like it's not humanly possible. Not possible. I don't care what you're doing. It's not possible. So, you know, recognize that it's taken a long time to get to the spot that you're in today. And you should be proud of, you know, your accomplishments in life, of where you're at from a success factor perspective, whether it's in business or family or everything else. And maybe you let your health, you know, slip a bit. But at the end of the day, getting started, making progress and having the small wins and recognizing that this is a journey and it's a never ending journey. You ever seen the video, the movie, The Never Ending Story? You know, it's the same thing. We're in it right now. It's like, this is the never ending story, right? We are continuously doing things that, you know, if we just stop today, our bodies will be like, oh, cool. Like I could be lazy again. I can sit on the couch. I can eat wheat thins. I can do this. I can do that. You know, I can do all these things that are going to allow me to get back to my sedentary lifestyle. And your mind will do that because it's the easiest thing to do, right? And our minds typically progress to the least amount of friction, least amount of effort, so that we can conserve energy, we can conserve things that we were doing, and focus on whatever, interests us from a hobby or, working perspective or accomplishment perspective. That's how we're wired. So, we have to fight those urges. We have to continue to train our bodies and our minds to say, this is what is expected of us to do. And we don't have a say in it. And your body will eventually come along to it. And I always hear this. I actually just saw somebody in Discord recently. It was like a couple of weeks ago, talk about this. And I remember this moment too, because it's kind of a switch that happens in your brain. And, the way that I can relate to this is I was listening to a Huberman Lab podcast, and we almost went the whole podcast. I'll talk about
No way. Did you listen to Huberman Lab?
We almost did. Yeah. Well, we're listening to Huberman Lab's podcast around, how our body fights new habits, hobbies, or things that we want to learn. And because, if you think about it from a tribal perspective, having an area of expertise that provides for your tribe made the tribe successful. So whether that was hunting, if you're a good hunter, you hunted. If you're a good gardener, you gardened. If you were good at building things, you built things. So, each of us have our own areas of hobbies and expertise that are interesting for us and that help collectively build our tribe, whether that's being a good father or being a good mother, or, going to work and providing for your family. Those are all things that our brain does in order to have success in our minds and hit the dopamine hits and everything else that allows us to feel happy and successful and everything else. So, when you think about going to the gym, I remember, man, so I was in Berea, which would have been, I probably would have said this was probably 2008, 2009. And I remember this story because I got out of the Marines and I started ballooning up in weight. And I saw myself getting out of control. Okay. I knew it was happening early on. And I've seen those signs before because, my whole life as a kid, I was overweight, obese. And so I got out of the Marines. I was in pretty decent shape in the Marines, but I had no clue on nutrition, working out. I had no idea how to work out because, I wasn't lifting heavy weights or things like that in the military, so I didn't know that part.
Just knew you had to run and do push-ups?
I just knew I had to run and do push-ups and do pull-ups. So that was it. And so I remember sitting there with one of my buddies. His name was Ryan at the time. And I remember we started going to the gym at 5:30 in the morning. Now, mind you, I had nothing in place. I had no nutrition. I had no sleep. I was drinking a copious amounts of alcohol. I didn't have any of the foundational principles that would make that gym, run successful. Okay. And, I'd go to the gym at 5:30 in the morning and I'd bust my ass doing cardio. And then I'd go home, I'd eat a shit ton of food and I'd gain weight and I'd get fatter. And I could never figure out what the hell was going on. But I remember sitting in the parking lot, and this is before I knew about pre-workout, by the way. So anyways, but I was sitting in the parking lot and I would dread going in there. I'd be like exhausted, tired because I didn't get good sleep. I felt like shit because I was drinking alcohol. I wasn't eating the right food. So again, my body wasn't nutritionally sound from a whole foods perspective, replenishment perspective. And I'd sit in the parking lot and I dread going into the gym. I'd hate it. I hated that feeling. I hated going there, but I still got up because my buddy Ryan was there, accountability, but I had none of the other principles to make me successful there. Now, flash forward, when I started with you, Ben, and I started going through this program, I had a good foundation of nutrition. I had a good foundation, because I learned from you, obviously, the nutrition side of things, the things that make me successful, and that's the mindset and everything else. But I still dreaded having to go to the gym. And about like 2 months into it, my brain, I remember this moment, it was a lift. And it was of course push day. So it was
of course there is no other day.
There's no other day. Just all Ben and I train all week long is chest, triceps, and shoulders. We don't care about any other body group,
And rest day.
Fuck the legs, fuck biceps, and rest day. Obviously that's a joke. But I remember sitting there upstairs and I was going to bed, and it was the first time that I looked forward to waking up in the morning and getting a lift in. And I actually set my clock to go earlier so I can get my lift in, which I normally do because I normally lift it more so in the afternoon. I set my clock to go lift up in the morning. And from that day on, my mind had finally stopped fighting me and accepted that this was part of the norm. And I had to go through it. And someone in Discord server had that same epiphany moment where they're like, man, it was the first time I went to the gym and I was like super excited about going and I really loved it. And so you have to recognize that, listen, as you're starting this, it's going to be, weeks, months, it varies based on distance, on time, on who you are. But eventually your brain's going to be like, hey, this is actually not so bad. I'm not dying. And you enjoy it. And the benefits of activating your muscle hypertrophy and your overall health and your body building up for longevity, all of those things start to happen. Your body's like, oh, hey, I kind of like this. I kind of need this. Okay, we're cool. We're good. I'll keep going. So, remember that as you're going through this journey, if you're just starting, it's going to take some time to get used to it. And also one thing to hit on too is DOMS, the delayed onset muscle soreness. That also starts to go away too if you're being consistent with your workouts. Unless you go to the gym with Ben and you decide to do hip abductors, then you're literally walking like a T-Rex. Like someone had.
I remember the first time that one of the first times that I trained properly. I used to live with my granny, so I sleep in a single bed. And I remember waking up the day after the gym. Honestly, my arms were stuck. Like I couldn't. There was nothing that I could do. I could not move them. Like they were stuck like this. I was like, how can I be like this for the rest of the day? Like I could not. Like it was like pain I had never ever felt before. So I can fully relate. Like it is not good fun. And I get to do that for a living now. I put other people through that pain, so it's great.
It's so funny. It's so funny you mentioned that, Rob. I'll let you go for a second, but it's so funny you mentioned that because when I actually live with people, I enjoy putting them.
Yeah.
I love seeing them struggle because and there's a reason for it. Obviously, they're pushing themselves to different limits. I love seeing people succeed. But anyways, I love putting people through pain. So,
the thing that I do actually enjoy is being able to show people that they can do more than they thought they were ever capable of. Yes, okay, maybe it is seeing them in pain and having a laugh at that they aren't able to walk or whatever. But it's with love always. But the one thing you were saying, about people sort of copying what you're doing or whatever the conversation was. I listened to, I can't remember where I saw it somewhere, Stephen Bartlett. And he talks about how people only see the success. And he's obviously talking about business, but I think it sort of applies to what we're talking about here. It's probably a pretty good life lesson across the board. People only see the success and then they try and copy what you're doing in the success, but they don't see the 2 years, 5 years, 10 years beforehand of everything that got you there. They're not willing to do that and put that work in. They just want to do what you're doing now to get the success, whether it's your physique, whether it's your business or whatever it is. And I think that is a pretty decent life lesson across the board.
Well, I always go back to there was a guy that slid into my DMs, like it was like a year ago or so. And they had mentioned to me like, Dave, I've been lifting for 10 years and I've never seen, my body doesn't look like that. And, like, how are you able to accomplish that? And what are you doing? And you're basically insinuating like, obviously other things and stuff like that. And I've been very transparent. I'm on testosterone and everything else, which is perfectly fine. And who cares? I mean, like what you want to do is up to you. Like you want to do in your body. Cool. So I started going through this guy's timeline and you can see, like when he works out, it's very infrequent, right? It's like once a month. And it's predominantly cardio, and you can see like beer, alcohol, big plates of food, pastas, everything else, and you see the lifestyle that this individual was living, and you're like, well, I can tell you why you're not seeing those consistent results just based on your timeline, and so if you're not getting the desired results, the consistency is probably the problem. Is it consistency in your gym routine? Is it consistency in your nutrition? Is it consistency in your sleep? What are the things that are not allowing you to get to your desired results of what you want to accomplish? And, again, like, there are things that can help you get there faster. Whatever you want to do to get there, that's fine. But notice that, most of the people that have success with this focus on the healthy lifestyles. They eat good foods. They get regular blood work done. They make adjustments. They go and they make sure that their levels, are checked, saying, hey, maybe I need to supplement with some iron or some, whatever. They're trying to optimize their bodies for longevity, health, and everything else that goes along with it. And so I think that the biggest misnomer of people is that this is a lot of work. It's not easy.
I think the biggest thing is people just aren't putting in the work that they think they are. Right. It's a little bit hard, and that's a struggle. And I think they should be getting, like, they're almost entitled to these results because they're putting a little bit of work in. And I've said this time and time again to clients specifically, I said, don't be pissed off with the results that you're not getting from the work that you're not doing. Like, it's hard fucking work to change your body. Yeah. It is absolutely worth it, but it is not easy street by any stretch of imagination. And especially if you have years and years and years of habits and bad habits and negative behaviors and loads of shit to overcome and stuff to break down with relationships around food and things you don't like doing in the gym and all this other shit. It's not just a case of, oh, well, I've been training for 6 weeks, so like, why am I not completely shredded? Like, what the fuck?
Yeah. And I think that the whole point of that is that, and I do want to say, yes, it's hard as hell, regardless of what stage you're in, right? But all of these things are built up over time. So don't think that like you have to go 0 to 500 right away, because that's not what we're talking about. That's going to burn you out immediately. If you're going to the gym all you're eating is chicken and rice. You're going to the gym, 7 days a week, you're doing 17 hours of cardio, you're going to burn yourself out. It's not going to be successful. It's not sustainable. Start off small, as we've preached before on this podcast several times, just getting steps in, 8 to 10,000 steps a day, being able to focus on your nutrition. Those two things alone are massive improvements over what you're currently doing. And then starting to incorporate some resistance training, get yourself some muscle. And it's interesting. One thing I wanted to hit on, because I've seen a lot of things focus on this as of late, which is actually a really positive sign that we're, I think, communicating the right message out there, is that there's a difference between fat loss and gaining muscle. And I'm seeing a lot more posts on this, which is appropriate, because the conversations have always been, you need to lose fat, right? But what does that mean? What does losing fat mean? Does that mean that the scale goes down? Or does that mean that you're building muscle and as a byproduct are starting to lose fat? And those are two very separate things. You could shave weight off 20, 30, 40, 50 pounds. But if you're not in a good system that is continuously maintaining that and helping you build muscle over time, you most likely will not be successful long-term with all of this. So it's good to see that there is information out there now that is communicating more so the right terminologies of how you're supposed to do this, which is, listen, you're not going to get, lean shredded 6-pack abs on a, cleanser diet that cleanses your body and removes inflammation. Okay. It's just not going to happen. But what that may do though, is help you digest better, make you feel better. And that's a good thing. There's nothing wrong with that, but you're not going to be in a maintainable state the rest of your life. You're not going to be able to use a cleanser thing and eating, 20 calories a day for the rest of your life. It's just, you're not going to be able to sustain that. So, and same thing for Atkins, unless I think what Atkins was originally done for narcolepsy. And, again, Atkins and keto, if you're not, if you don't have, not narcolepsy, was it narcolepsy?
Epilepsy, keto.
Epilepsy. Thank you. Yes. It was epilepsy. Thank you. So if you don't have epilepsy, is keto the right thing for you? Well, I mean, who's to say it is or not? If you're having success with it and you can stick with that the rest of your life, fine. 99% of people that go on keto can't stay with it because they get tired of eating meats and cheeses and fats and things like that all the time and low carbohydrates. But what I wanted to focus on that was, putting something that's sustainable long-term, that you're slowly building muscle over time, you're slowly losing fat over time, will allow you to sustain this for the rest of your life, right? And that's what you want to accomplish. You don't want to go back to, hey, I dropped 50 pounds. Hey, I gained 70 pounds. Hey, I dropped 20 pounds. Hey, I gained 40 pounds. That's the cycle that we're in, because we all cannot handle what it actually takes. It's a long-term, slow grind to get to that point.
Yeah, I actually had a conversation very recently with on a discovery call with a client. And they basically said, they've been able to lose weight before and put it back on and lose it and put it back on. They're like, I'm at the point where I do not want to do that again. I don't want to yo-yo again. It's like, I've lost, I think he said he'd maybe lost 40 pounds this time around. And he was like, I'm at the point now where this is where the shit hits the fan. I start to go the other way. So I was like, I need something that takes me past that barrier and means that I don't sort of push or bounce back up. And again, Anthony, we spoke about last, he was the same. There was a very specific weight that he got to every single time. We needed to just break past that barrier. And I would say that a lot of it is a mental relationship with the number as well. Like whenever you get to that, it's like that, oh shit moment, the house is going to burn down type thing. And it's sort of being able to find a way to push past that and find something that can take you beyond whatever it is that got you there, whether it's a fucking juice cleanse or keto or whatever other that you decide to do. Everything has a purpose for a time, but just recognize that you need something that's a bit more sustainable and a bit more long-term.
So in summary, don't compare yourself to others, compare yourself and hold yourself accountable, right? If you're not getting the desired results, keep pushing yourself to get those desired results, right? Whether that's, being lean, whether that's being muscular, whether that's being a general physique that is appeasing with your shirt off, whatever that ends up being, that's your goals. Set those goals, continue to change those goals, to make sure that you continue forward and progress forward. But at the end of the day, you should only be comparing yourself to yourself. And again, I'm not saying that the folks that weren't saying that, are negatively talking about themselves, right? They're obviously, giving me a compliment. I appreciate the compliment, and it's very, humbling to me to be able to have people say, hey, you look great. I've never had people say you look great before. So this is an unusual time for me. Right.
Like,
yeah. I'm like, who? It's not gonna be like, it's almost like the imposter syndrome stuff that we struggle with in the security industry very heavily, which is, I remember going up on stage. I'm like, well, how am I, we have all these massive giants that are just amazingly brilliant people. Why am I up here presenting in front of all of these people. It's the same type of feeling that I get.
I have a question.
Yeah.
Do you get a little bit embarrassed when people give you a compliment like that? In person?
I do.
Because it's hard. It's difficult to take a compliment. It's hard. Like to take. You always will be like, "Oh no, this whole thing."
I shift the conversation. Yeah. I shift the conversation, and I do that in business. I do that in my personal life, and I do it online too, because I don't like the attention of somebody giving me a compliment because I don't feel like I deserve it. If that makes sense. It's a weird, stupid thing. Like it is something I always struggle with. Like when I get a compliment online, I'm like, "Oh, hey, thanks," but you are amazing. Like, thank you for what you do. You're like, my wife always says, you can't give somebody a compliment after they give you a compliment. It doesn't make any sense. And I'm like, yeah, but I can't handle me not giving a compliment back to somebody that gave me a compliment because I don't feel like I deserve that compliment. So it's a weird thing that I go through. But yes, online, if someone's like, I'm no Dave Kennedy, I'm like, well, I appreciate that, but I am proud of you for what you do. And I'm like, don't look at me like, it's
tough. It's tough.
I appreciate it. I'm appreciative of it.
One thing that I want to challenge you to do, because someone has challenged me to do this in the past, when someone gives you a compliment, just say thank you. And that's it. It's so hard to do. And I've seen it so many, like when people comment on something, someone are like, oh, I've had this for ages, as if that means that it's not nice or good, or they can't make a compliment on it.
Right.
Yeah. You just have to say thank you and leave the conversation there. It's tough.
Okay, I'll give it a shot. It's one of those things where I have always struggled with that, and I'm always in tune to people's emotions, which is, I can remember, not to derail this conversation, but like,
I think everybody's okay with derailing us conversations, but 78 episodes.
Derail conversations. Yeah. I remember as a kid, I was getting into the teenager stage of things, and I was doing Taekwondo. And I was, again, overweight as a Taekwondo kid, very, unathletic. I didn't do, any sports other than like rec basketball and stuff like that. But, maybe a little bit of moving around, but I was still, extremely overweight. And I just continued to progress that through my teenager years. And, there's certain moments in your life that you remember, you look back in. And I remember I was testing for my black belt. And, I woke up that morning not prepared to test for my black belt. My mind wasn't there. I was kind of like angry. I was pissed at the previous day. School didn't go well. I was getting picked on or something like that. So I just didn't feel like going and testing for my black belt. And that day I was an a-hole to people. Like, I was just like grumpy. I didn't want to do anything. And I failed my black belt test. And my dad said to me, he said, listen, and I was mad at everybody. I was mad at the whole world. I was like, it's the whole world's fault that I didn't get my black belt. And what my dad said to me, which I still remember to this day, because it set such a burn in my brain. He's like, listen, the only person that, and I'm glad he had this conversation with me too, but he was a hard ass. So I appreciated the conversation. He's like, the only person you have to blame for this is yourself. You woke up this morning mad at everybody else. You already failed the test before you even set foot on the ground because you didn't have the mindset of going in. And he's like, I'm actually kind of concerned about you right now because you are extremely in tune to people's emotions. And you didn't seem to care about anybody else but yourself today. And that was like a dagger. I was like, oh my God, you're right. I've always carried that with me of trying to understand other people's perspectives, emotions, and to help, uplift other people as well, not just for myself. And, so when I get compliments like that, my instant reaction is to remove that from myself and to put it back onto them because I'm appreciative of what they're doing. So, it's interesting that we have those stories that kind of forge us and like little moments that you can remember, that make you who you are today. And a good life lesson, from a father-son perspective of, focusing on what's important and owning your own mistakes, owning your own shortcomings, and being able to say, well, you're right. The only person that I have to blame for my health issues today is myself. And that's actually what caused this whole health journey. The doctor said, listen, you're not going to be around for your kids, basically saying you're selfish. You're going to be dying at an early age and not providing for your kids because you're not out there, focusing on yourself and making yourself a better person from a health perspective. So, we can all do it. It's just a matter of owning our own, internal struggles, saying, fuck it, mind, I don't care what you say. There's no option. This is it. And
it's just being a fucking adult and taking responsibility for your own actions. It's like, if anybody hasn't read it, I would highly recommend Jocko's book, Extreme Ownership. Whenever you learn how to take ownership for your own actions, you will your life will be completely different. People can't piss you off. Like, you just have a different way of thinking about things. And even like you said, like, you were totally to blame on that day that you didn't pass the test because it was your own actions that got you there. So definitely would recommend listening to that book. Anyway,
it's a great book.
Next Friday, which is this Friday, whenever you're listening to this, on Tuesday, the 24th, I have my second webinar, which we're going to do. I don't know if you want to come and join me, but we're going to do some myth busting around stuff around the fitness industry. And it's been kind of fun, just stuff that people think that isn't necessarily true. So I'm going to do that. The link, why I'm doing this, but the link will be in the notes for anybody who wants to sign up and join. 24th at 1 p.m. Eastern.
That's it. That's our podcast for today. Thank you all so much for listening. I'll bring it home. Join us on social media, We Hack Health, Discord, We Hack Health. Come join our community. Share your positive experiences, your struggles. Ask for knowledge, provide knowledge. We are a community of sharing and helping each other out, uplift one another to make the world a better place for health and fitness.
Even if you just want to come and shit post and give Dave a hard time, we're open to that too.
Or if you want to give me a compliment, see me squirm, that's also good. But no, we truly appreciate all of our listeners. It's awesome to see, I see a lot of the posts on social media and Discord, like all the, this is what just got done with my left out, guess what I'm doing next. And it's a picture of us listening to our podcast. So we appreciate all you listening. You keep us going, and, share us with friends, family, things that folks you think would benefit from this. And last thing, to quote Papa Swolio, go to the fucking gym.
See you next week.
See you next week.